For questions, if you have questions for Mark?
Can you talk a little bit more about milkweed and where you get it and how it grows and what to do with it?
All right, well, you can go from seed. I mean, if you go, if you're out in the wild and you see a milkweed plant, you know, and just take a few of the seeds, not all of them, just a tiny portion of them, and take them, you can put them in the ground. Plant them the time nature wants you to plant them. You know, at the time when they're supposed to be flying off in the air, they just need a bare area and put them in the ground. It might work, it might not, but they're free. There are places where you can buy them. You can buy milkweed seeds, but why? You want to have the seeds as close to the area as possible. There are certain genotypes in the local area that, you know, the plants have evolved for this particular area. So, you know, if you see enough of them wild, or if you have a friend who has them, just ask for some seeds.
Come to my house.
Go to Jackie Griswold's house.
Do they grow like in shade and stuff, or does it need to be
Sun, they're more of a
here?
sun. They're more of a meadow plant. Now,
Right.
the problem in Simsbury is that we have a lot of trees.
Right.
So, you know, there are some woodland plants. A lot of, if it's under the conifers, good luck. But if it's under the deciduous trees, you know, you can think about the spring wildflowers. There's some lovely spring wildflowers, and you can use all the leaves that you push them over, make lovely leaf mold, nice, you know, organic, rich things for them to be in. But those companies that I said, you know, they have a good variety, and there are always ones popping up. Lisa, you probably know, you're starting one. Lisa Newell over here is starting up a nursery with Nick growing things. So go to Lisa's. Lisa will get your plants.
In Canton?
Where's your, in Canton?
Where in Canton?
It's on Cherrybrook Road, but I won't be selling from there. So I'll have more details later in the.
We'll let you know.
Stay tuned.
On the Facebook page.
Yes.
So, I have a friend who last year was helping the monarchs, and so my question is, I thought at the last presentation, they said, don't take them in and just let them be. And that's really what we're supposed to do, right?
Yeah.
Just let them be, not
Yeah.
take them in and give them milkweed.
Yeah. I mean, some birds may eat them, but that's the way it's supposed to be. Yeah, I've heard the heroic tales, but we tend to kill things with kindness. Yeah, so I just let it do what it's supposed to do. Yeah, outside. Yes.
No, when I had milkweed, I had like a zillion tussock moths.
All right. Yes. Good.
Those are good. They ate it.
Yeah, I have them.
There are some native tussock moths. They're all part of that wonderful food web. So as I said, we need. There are some caterpillars that are, you know, not native. But you know, there are caterpillar books or resources where, and you know, if you think of it as not a butterfly garden, but again as a caterpillar garden, you're going to be more, you know, amenable to the fact, oh, I've got caterpillars on my plants. Now they might strip it. There's one. There's a lovely. The painted ladies love the pussy toads. And when they're on that, they wrap up, you know, they eat the leaves, and you think, oh, that's the end of that. The plant often comes back after that. There are all sorts of ways that plants, you know, will adapt to being eaten, and so, oh yes, here they come, they're gonna eat me, but I won't. You know, it's a stress to the plant, but they co-evolve with it. So, and, you know, it gets to who are we gardening for? Are we gardening just to have it look really nice for us? Or are we putting out that lovely smorgasbord for the creatures that you get to watch? You know, because it's lovely having life in the garden besides a pretty flower. You want something eating that flower, you want something eating the leaf, you want things there. You want some ecological function going on there. So, yes.
My question is, I know sun is a big thing. I have a lot of oaks, so I have a lot of shade.
Yeah.
Are there more shade plants that are good caterpillar feeders?
Again, with the oaks, with some of the plants, I would go with the spring ephemerals and let them die back. There's some, Lisa, what would you say for oaks, under oaks?
I would have to look at the chart that we were talking about for host plants, because there's a lot of, certainly nectar plants that grow in the shade, you know, a lot of tiarellas and,
Yeah, I have pulmonary and I have violets in the lawn.
Pulmonaria, yep,
But
so
that's
violets will do.
Yeah.
There's actually a species of, goldenrod that will grow
Yeah,
in the shade.
woodland goldenrod, and then the wood asters. The wood asters later in the season. I mean, you're more limited in areas where I mean, that's why it's much easier to do a butterfly garden in the sun. But there are still plants that will bloom in the shade. But
And remember how many of the caterpillars are supported
yeah,
by the
exactly.
oaks.
Yeah.
You have a butterfly garden you're supporting so many species. And of course, then you've got the acorns, which supports other creatures too. And then the creatures that, it's just a wonderful, wonderful species. So, we don't need to get so obsessed about the flowers, but if you have somewhere else and you want to put some showy flowers, that's good. But having those native trees is really, really important. And there are a whole variety of shrubs and trees that support not only the caterpillars but the butterflies. We tend to think of butterfly gardens only as flower gardens, but I do another talk that's all about shrubs and trees that support just as many.
I had no idea. My neighbor wanted to plant a butterfly garden and we listed a whole bunch of plants and that she planted that don't support, that do nothing.
Yeah.
The butterfly bushes. I had no idea. So thank you.
I once did a whole talk and I was talking, I was really talking trash about the butterfly weed, about bush. And then at the end of the talk, someone said, well, at the end of the season, I cut mine down, but I'm worried it's not gonna grow back. And I said, you didn't cut it down far enough. And someone said, no, I think he wants it to grow back. I said, no. So, yeah.
You mentioned oak trees. Is it all oak trees or is it just the white oak?
The white oak is the one that they're concentrating on most because of the acorns and the number of species. But the pin oaks, the black, the red, all the different oaks. I mean, right now, I know there's a lot of emphasis on the white oaks because of the mass crop, but they're just any oak. I mean, as long as it's from around here. Yeah.
Sometimes we don't have mass,
No, and that's for a reason. The oak trees don't make the same number of acorns every year, because if they did, then all of the animals that eat acorns would come and their populations would rise just to the level where they eat them all. So the trees actually communicate with each other and plan when they're gonna have that big year with acorns. And then the next year they say, I'm exhausted. And then the squirrel population this year, the turkey, the bear, all the animals that eat the acorns, their population drops. So it's actually the plants that control the animal populations. Yeah.
One oak that you didn't mention, that someone gave to me for my birthday, is a swamp oak. Have you ever, and it came from a nursery, from their native area.
It probably, it's frozen. Did you plant it in a wet area or?
No, I didn't. Counterintuitive, but.
Yeah, I always said, there's certain plants like will do, they probably will do okay. There's some plants that will do okay in a dry area, but they'll, as opposed to the white oak won't do well in the swampy area or something like that. But it'll probably still, it's still got oak leaves, so it will, of some forms that the insects will like. There's a wonderful book by Douglas Tallamay called The Nature of Oaks. It's only 12 chapters and one chapter for each month. And it's a wonderful walk down his explanation of why oak trees are so important for the insects and for the rest. Yes?
Another question about the sort of woodland versus more like meadow type landscape. I sometimes think about like the reforestation of New England over the last century and how so many of our birds and pollinators find habitat in the meadows, and I'm wondering like how much of that has been sort of man-made landscapes through like legacy farming meadows and things like that.
A lot.
And the just the balance necessarily between like woodland landscape and potentially letting like sort of wild grasses and wild natives.
Yeah. Grasses don't like trees and trees don't like fruit. So, but, I mean, about 200 years ago, we were 80% farmland, 20% forest. now we're about 60% forest. The default setting for Connecticut is trees.
Right.
If you don't mow your lawn, it will become a forest.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's a thing, should we be bringing back the meadow plants? Because a lot of those birds and insects moved in because they moved in from the Midwest where there are more meadows. It's not necessarily a native habitat, although we get forest disturbances that we create openings, and then we get that beavers were really good at creating those openings. So it's nice to have that habitat but it's, those meadow creatures are not really the dominant creatures in Connecticut. But when you think about how we can manage our yards, we can't have a 500-acre forest in our backyard, but we can have thickets. Shrubs are great. They're great for pollinators, they're great for bees. We can do thickets, and we can also do, instead of lawns, which are sort of biological deserts, we can do meadows in some of our areas. So, and we can manage them. We can't, it's hard to manage. I know in Simsbury, Lancaster, I was just out for a hike, trying to find someone to help mow the fields up at Tanager Hill. And we're very disappointed that the one young man who's been mowing our fields is moving on to do something else. It's getting harder and harder to find people to mow the fields. But we can manage our own properties, and I'm thinking, we can't make the forests into meadows, but we can manage our backyards as meadows, or that meadow-like habitats for those creatures. Yes?
How do mushrooms come into house?
That's another thought. They are recyclers. They are the recyclers of everything. And I know from Simsbury Manchester, I just did a talk on morticulture, which is the life in old dead trees and the role of fungus. And actually on Monday, I'm doing a talk to the Simsbury Garden Club all about the wood wide web and how the mushrooms grow into the tree roots and talk to the trees and share the sugars that the trees get and give them all sorts of nutrients from the soil and allow them the trees to talk so that they can coordinate their acorn mass crop and other things like that. Yeah.
What should we know about what types of mushrooms that make use of transport?
Generally, I don't think we have any invasive mushrooms. I think they're mostly native. I don't think anyone's brought in any. Gosh, I hope not. It's hard to have to keep up with the other invasives. But so anything you see out there, and there are so many. I think I was reading like there was, I don't know, 5 million different kinds of mushrooms. So, and depending on the year, you may not see one mushroom, and then the next year, when it's really wet, you see mushrooms that you've never seen before, and you may never see again. So there are just so many mushrooms. But I'm glad you're asking a question about mushrooms.
We'll do a morticulture. Again, we'll make sure that Marjorie.
my new favorite
Your new
thing.
favorite thing, this is what she talks about all the time, is morticulture. At
Which
first
is
I really-
the study of old dead, what grows in old dead trees. No, it's not about morticians.
Which is what I thought. I was like, okay. So, anybody else?
Well, thank you very, yeah.
I have a big mulberry tree that gets tons of these little berries and sort of birds like. Are they good for anything else?
Well, the silkworm caterpillars, I mean, that one of the, Connecticut tried to bring in mulberry trees there's a red mulberry and a white mulberry, and I always get confused with which one's native and which one's not. But Manchester has mulberry tree as their symbol, their town symbol, and they have the Cheney Mills. We're all about raising, and if any of you have had the fun of raising silkworms, we do at the Nature Center, and they will only eat mulberry leaves. And they are voracious eaters and kind of stinky and they're disgusting. They grow to be about the size of your finger, sort of a pale white. I've become horrified by them over the years. But yeah, the birds will eat them, but you have to make sure it's the native one because you don't want to be spreading them. One of them's
The red is native.
the red's native, so if you've got a red one. Yeah, the birds love them, but there is a non-native and a native one. And they were brought in, Connecticut really thought, in the colonial days, they would be a big silk center. It didn't work out. All right. Well, thank you very, very much. It's been great having you.